Now, author is in Dallas today, giving a briefing on the ongoing war against Hamas. Avi Melamed, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Hello, Brandon. Thank you for having me.
I wanted to start off with the latest news in the headlines. Israeli soldiers admitting that they accidentally killed 3 hostages. So how does this impact the perception of Israel's war effort and also the continued message from Benjamin Netanyahu that there will be no ceasefire?
Well, as you can understand, it's a very tragic event. I mean, we are doing everything possible in order to try to bring back the hostages alive. At the same time, we have to remember they are operating in a very challenging, militarily speaking, environment because the Hamas people are disguised as civilians, as citizens. So in the heat of the fight, you need to be able, in a milliseconds, to know who is enemy and who is friend. And sometimes you have to make a decision, and sometimes those decisions are bad decisions. In this case, it was definitely something that should not have happened. Hopefully it will not repeat itself in the future. It has it's some sort of an impact, but in the end of the day, when you look at the whole objective of the war assigned by the Israeli government, there are 2 major objectives: to eliminate Hamas rule in Gaza Strip and to try to bring back home the Israeli hostages killed by Hamas and Islamic Jihad on October 7th.
Yeah. Now, the next question is something that you can't possibly explain in the time that we have, and a question I'm sure you've been asked a lot. When people talk about peace or a 2-state solution, explain how difficult that is. Israel is surrounded by a lot of ideologies and militant groups who have, on the record, called for Israel's destruction. And there's a lot of misperceptions even just over the course of, so many years. Kids growing up being told stories on both sides that a lot of people have determined to be maybe some misperceptions. It's a very difficult situation.
It is very difficult, Brandon. Let me tell you something about it. Peace is irrelevant at this point, and the whole story of the 2-state solution is also irrelevant. I'm always saying to my Western audience, look, in the Middle East, people don't talk about peace. They are talking about long-term arrangements that could be sustained from time to time. I think this is the case right here. By the way, it's not a blame of game. I found both Israelis and Palestinians to be responsible for the gloomy situation, but both people simply cannot get together today to the table and make the concessions they really need to make in order to be able to get to a situation where talking about 2-state solution would be even something realistic to talk about.
So instead of peace, should we think about it more in terms of maybe an indefinite ceasefire?
I would say something more than that. I would say that it has to be done in frame of regional envelope, bringing together the major players in the region, namely today Egypt, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates and others who are interested in stability, because we have to remember that we have a very major destabilizer in the region. It's called Iran. So if you bring those major players to the tables, and they are very significant, creating this envelope will create this scaffolding that will enable, hopefully, Palestinians and Israelis to move on to the next phase of arrangements that will be something above ceasefire, but something that is kind of like hopefully, offering a much more positive trajectory for the 2 people. But yet, not talking exactly about peace because it's really not irrelevant at this point.
Now, you'll be speaking today, I guess, with the organization Friends of the Israel Defense Forces. What's your message to them?
The message is that we are fighting for our home back in Israel. The soldiers of Israel are now fighting a very dangerous and brutal enemy inside the Gaza Strip. Our soldiers are doing a great job inside the Gaza Strip. At the same time, we of course need the whole help that we could get in order to try and to make sure that our soldiers will have everything they need. I'm not talking about ammunition, I'm not talking about weapons, I'm talking about all the other elements that are also not less significant in such a situation. And of course, I will explain to them the whole geostrategic complexity of the situation, because there is a lot of information out there, Brandon, but people need to see the more comprehensive picture. So they could take all these pieces of the puzzles and basically assemble that and create this one cohesive, clear puzzle.
Well, you talk about complex. My next question, so let's say there comes a point where Israel decides, yes, in our opinion, Hamas has been destroyed. Now what?
I want to say something about it. The issue here is not to destroy Hamas. Hamas is not going to disappear. Hamas is a political movement, it has ideological roots, it's like ISIS in the sense that you can't really eliminate ISIS because it exists. What we have to do and has to be done, and this is a global and international task, is to make sure that Hamas will not become any longer a relevant player. Hamas views itself as a regional relevant player. Up until October 7, he played that role. Following October 7, we need to make sure that Hamas will be irrelevant player, meaning that Hamas will not be able to continue and to eliminate and to dictate its radical ideology. In order to do that, we need to make two things: to take away from Hamas its major military spine in Gaza Strip, and to end its rule in Gaza Strip.
Wow, there's so much more to talk about. All right, we appreciate your time, Avi.